Amaka lay on the bed, her heart pounding in anticipation. She had always dreamt of this night with Chinedu, but now, faced with the reality of it, she felt an overwhelming fear creeping in. "What is this?" she screamed, her voice trembling as she shrank into the corner of the bed, eyes wide with disbelief. "Why? Why is your thing so big?" she stammered, unable to hide the shock. Her body, which had moments ago been filled with excitement, now recoiled in both fear and disappointment. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can't do this," Amaka whispered, her voice breaking as tears rolled down her face. She had always imagined this night, her first time with Chinedu, but never expected this. She had judged his size with her eyes and convinced herself she could handle it. But now, seeing him in front of her, it felt impossible. Chinedu, sensing her fear, quickly stood up, his heart aching at the sight of her tears. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle yet pleading. "Amaka, please don't do this. You know I love you. I've waited for this moment with you for so long." His eyes glistened with passion and desperation. "I promise, I will be gentle. I want you so much, but I will take it slow." Amaka's breath was shaky as she replied, "But I'm scared, Chinedu. I've never done this before. I don't know if I can." Chinedu leaned closer, softly, his hands moving slightly at the back of her ear, trying to calm her trembling. The small hut was thick with tension, their desire battling against fear. Both of them wanted it. Their hearts prayed silently to the gods for guidance, for a miracle to make this moment right. After what felt like an eternity of tender touches and whispered words, Chinedu made another attempt, slowly guiding her through the moment. But then, in an instant, Amaka let out a scream, so loud it shattered the silence of the night. Her cry pierced the stillness of the village, waking those who had been fast asleep. Villagers rushed out of their huts, eyes wide with fear and confusion. They gathered outside Chinedu's home, drawn to the sound of the scream. Among them was Amaka's father, Mazio Koro, his face tight with worry and anger. "What's going on in there?" Mazio Koro shouted, pounding on Chinedu's door with force. "Open this door! We heard a woman scream. What have you done to her?" Inside the hut, Chinedu froze. His heart raced as the reality of the situation sank in. "That's your father," he whispered, his voice filled with dread. Amaka lay on the bed, her body shaking, pain radiating through her. She was bleeding. "I'm so sorry, Amaka," Chinedu begged, his voice cracking with guilt. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Amaka could barely move, her body weak, her mind clouded with fear. "What are we going to do? My father is going to kill us if he gets in here." The banging on the door grew louder, more furious. "Chinedu, open this door right now before I break it down," Mazio Koro roared. Without hesitation, Mazio Koro kicked the door, sending it crashing to the ground. The night had taken a terrifying turn, and Chinedu and Amaka were left standing in the middle of it, their hearts heavy with regret and fear, as they faced the wrath of a father and the judgment of the village. Once upon a time, in a village nestled between golden beaches and tall, swaying coconut trees, lived a man named Chinedu. Chinedu was no ordinary man. He was tall, dark, and strikingly handsome. His body was built like the ancient warriors of old, broad shoulders and chiseled muscles, with his upper body covered in intricate tattoos. His skin gleamed like polished ebony, and his perfect white teeth flashed whenever he offered his gentle smile. He was the dream of every young woman in the village. Chinedu's skill as a blacksmith was unmatched. He crafted beautiful cookware and farming tools for the entire village. His success set him apart from other men, and his presence made them envious. Every time Chinedu passed by, women would whisper among themselves, their eyes lingering on him. "Chinedu is so handsome and successful," they would say by the beach, their voices filled with longing. "I wish he were mine. Imagine the beautiful children we'd have together." "But have you noticed?" one of the women, Adugo, asked. "He doesn't seem to have any woman in his life. He's more single than even the least attractive man in the village." "Why do you think that is?" Ify replied, sipping from a freshly cracked coconut. "He's always working. Maybe he's just too busy. With the way he's going, he'll probably earn a title soon." One morning, while Chinedu was shaping a beautiful iron pot outside his hut, a young woman approached. She had smooth, fair skin and a head full of thick afro curls. "Good day, sir. My name is Amaka," she said softly. "My father, Mazio Koro, sent me to collect the pot you've made." Chinedu looked up and smiled. I didn't know Mazio Koro had such a beautiful daughter. How come I've never seen you around? Blushing, Amaka replied, I grew up with my mother in the neighboring village. I just returned yesterday. Well, I hope to see you around more often, Chinedu said warmly as he handed her the pot. Send my regards to your father. As Amaka walked back home, her heart raced. She had never seen a man so handsome, so gentle. She couldn't stop smiling, her thoughts swirling with the memory of Chinedu's smile. Back at home, Mazio Koro sat in front of their hut. Is that my pot? He asked with excitement. It's beautiful. I can't wait for you to cook me a delicious pot of goat meat pepper soup, just like your mother's. Yes, Papa, Amaka replied, her mind still on Chinedu. She hesitated before asking, Papa, what do you know about the blacksmith? Chinedu, I mean. Mazio Koro's face grew serious. Chinedu is a strong man, my daughter. Rumor has it that he's either impotent or simply too arrogant to approach any woman. Many people say he refuses to marry because he thinks he's better than the rest. But why are you asking about him, Amaka? No reason, Papa. I was just curious, Amaka said quickly. I've heard he's handsome, but I'll be careful. Good, Mazio Koro warned. There's something off about him. Every sixth market day, the youth of the village would gather at the beach, where the cool evening breeze carried the scent of roasted bushmeat and corn. They would light campfires, dance, eat, and drink, hoping to find love. But Chinedu never attended these gatherings, no matter how many admirers begged him to come. Until tonight. Tonight was different. Chinedu decided to go, drawn by the hope of seeing Amaka again. As soon as Chinedu stepped onto the beach, all heads turned. The laughter and music quieted, and all eyes locked onto him. The women whispered excitedly, thrilled by his presence, while the men grew silent, their faces tinged with jealousy. All except Muna, the village magician, a young man known for his flamboyant personality and playful spirit. Unlike the other men, Muna wasn't threatened by Chinedu. In fact, he was intrigued. Muna made his way over to Chinedu, who was scanning the crowd, searching for someone. You're Chinedu, the blacksmith, Muna said, sitting beside him. Yes, Chinedu replied. And you are? Munachi, but everyone calls me Muna, he said with a grin. Are you looking for someone? Chinedu hesitated before asking, Do you know a girl named Amaka? Mazio Koro's daughter? I was hoping to see her here tonight. Muna smiled and pointed toward the shore, where Amaka sat alone, throwing stones into the water. Thanks, Chinedu said as he stood up and made his way toward her. When Chinedu reached Amaka, she looked up, surprised but pleased. I didn't expect to see you here, Chinedu said, his voice soft. I'm glad I came, Amaka replied, smiling shyly. I was hoping to see you too. They spent the evening together, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. As the fire crackled in the background, they danced and drank fresh palm wine, lost in each other's company. For the first time, Chinedu felt something new stirring within him, a desire to share more than just his work, a longing to connect with someone. And as the night wore on, it became clear to everyone that something special was blossoming between the blacksmith and the girl from the neighboring village. As the weeks passed, Chinedu and Amaka grew closer. They would meet by the beach at dusk, sharing quiet moments by the water. Amaka admired Chinedu's strength, his quiet wisdom, and the way he dedicated himself to his craft. Meanwhile, Chinedu found in Amaka a gentleness and warmth that he had never experienced before. She wasn't like the other women who gossiped about him or eyed him from afar. Amaka saw him for who he truly was, beyond his handsome face and reputation. Their connection didn't go unnoticed. The women in the village, who had long been mesmerized by Chinedu, were now whispering behind Amaka's back. Every time they saw Chinedu and Amaka walking together, jealousy burned in their eyes. Can you believe it? One woman hissed, her voice filled with bitterness. Chinedu, the most handsome man in the village, and he chooses her, a girl who just arrived from another village. She must have bewitched him, another woman chimed in. How else could someone like her win his heart? The envy grew, but Amaka remained blissfully unaware. She was too focused on her growing relationship with Chinedu. The way he looked at her, the way he smiled, it made her feel like the only woman in the world. And for Chinedu, being with Amaka brought a calmness, a peace he hadn't realized he needed. But amidst all this, there was Muna, the village magician, who had taken a curious interest in Chinedu. Unlike the others, Muna wasn't envious of Chinedu, he was rather intrigued. Muna, known for his playful and sometimes eccentric nature, decided he wanted to be closer to Chinedu. One evening, after watching Chinedu and Amaka share a quiet moment near the blacksmith's workshop, Muna approached Chinedu as he packed up his tools. "Good evening, Chinedu," Muna greeted with a wide smile, his voice light and playful. "I see you've been spending a lot of time with Amaka lately." Chinedu looked up, surprised to see Muna. "Yes, I have," he replied, his voice guarded but not unfriendly. "She's a good person." Muna grinned and sat down on a nearby bench, crossing his legs casually. "You know, I've always admired your work. You have a talent unlike anyone else in this village. But there's more to you than just a blacksmith, isn't there?" Chinedu raised an eyebrow, unsure of where Muna was heading with this conversation. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Muna said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "you're a man of strength and mystery. You don't just make tools and pots, you create things with soul. I'd like to get to know you better. Perhaps we can work together. You know, I could teach you a thing or two about magic, and you could teach me your craft." Chinedu chuckled, shaking his head. "Magic, you say? I'm not sure how much use I'd have for it in my work." "Oh, you'd be surprised," Muna said with a wink. "Magic isn't just about tricks or illusions. It's about understanding the world in a different way. And I think someone like you, with your strength and discipline, could unlock some truly powerful things." Chinedu wasn't convinced, but there was something about Muna's enthusiasm that intrigued him. Besides, Muna wasn't like the other men in the village who looked at him with either jealousy or resentment. Muna seemed genuinely interested in him as a person. "All right, Muna," Chinedu said, standing up and wiping his hands on a cloth. "I don't know about magic, but I wouldn't mind getting to know you better." Muna's face lit up. "Wonderful. We'll make a great team, Chinedu. Trust me, this village won't know what hit them." As Muna worked to get closer to Chinedu, Amaka and Chinedu's relationship continued to flourish. They spent their evenings together, talking about their dreams and hopes for the future. Amaka's father, Mazi Okoro, had started to soften toward Chinedu as well, though he still held on to some reservations. One day, as Amaka walked through the village to meet Chinedu, a group of women stood by the market, their voices dripping with envy. "She thinks she's better than us just because she's with Chinedu now," one of them spat. "She must have done something to him. Maybe her mother taught her some kind of charm," another added, her tone bitter. But Amaka paid no attention to their words. She had learned to ignore the jealous whispers. Her bond with Chinedu was real, and she wasn't about to let petty gossip get in the way of her happiness. As Chinedu grew closer to both Amaka and Muna, his life began to change. The once solitary blacksmith now found himself surrounded by two very different companions. One, the woman who had captured his heart, and the other, the eccentric magician who wanted to unlock a different side of him. Little did Chinedu know, the peaceful life he had always known was about to be disrupted in ways he could never have imagined. Chinedu had a very big problem, a secret no one knows about, not even his mother. He has a very big manhood that he finds it very difficult to penetrate any woman. This problem had made him to keep his distance from women. But he really wanted something deep and intimate with Amaka. For a man of his age and stature, it's long overdue that he had never had sex, not even for once in his life. One cool evening, as the sun began its slow descent beyond the horizon, Chinedu sat at the front of his hut, staring blankly into the distance. The rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the beach usually brought him comfort, but today he was lost in his thoughts. His hands were clasped together, resting on his knees, and though his body seemed still, his mind was swirling with turmoil. Tears, silent and unbidden, began to roll down his cheeks. Chinedu wasn't the kind of man who cried easily, but something deep within him, something he had buried for years, had finally surfaced. It was as if the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. Unknown to Chinedu, Muna had been watching him from the shadows, perched on a tree stump not far from the hut. Muna, with his usual air of mystery, had a knack for slipping into places unnoticed, and tonight was no different. He had come by, curious to see how his new friend was doing, but the sight of Chinedu, the unshakable blacksmith, in such a vulnerable state, left Muna both surprised and concerned. Quietly, Muna stepped forward, his movements as graceful as ever. He approached Chinedu, who was so deep in thought that he didn't notice Muna's presence until he was standing right in front of him. Chinedu. Muna's soft voice broke through the silence, startling him. Chinedu quickly wiped at his face, embarrassed that someone had caught him in this state. He tried to compose himself, forcing a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Muna, what are you doing here? I should ask you the same thing, my friend, Muna said, his voice gentle but probing. I came to check on you, but it seems something is weighing heavy on your heart. What troubles you, Chinedu? Chinedu turned his gaze away, not wanting to meet Muna's curious eyes. It's nothing, he muttered, shaking his head. Just tired, I suppose. But Muna was not one to be easily fooled. He had always sensed there was something more to Chinedu than the village saw, something hidden beneath the surface. And now, seeing Chinedu's tears, Muna was more convinced than ever that there was a secret, something deep and painful, that Chinedu was keeping to himself. Don't lie to me, Chinedu, Muna said, taking a seat beside him. You may be able to fool the others, but not me. There's something you're hiding. I can feel it. Muna placed a hand on Chinedu's shoulder, his touch reassuring. Chinedu, it's okay if you don't want to open up to me now. You can take your time. When you're ready, I want you to know that I'm always going to be here to listen to you. I promise. Muna, in an attempt to cheer him up, cast a spell that made the ocean sound louder in a mystic rhythm. Chinedu was astonished, but the villagers never said you could perform actual magic. They said you had some few party tricks. How is this possible? His expression shifted from sadness to curiosity and surprise. I'm glad I'm able to take you off that mood. That's what's important. I'm just like you. There are some truth that's best hidden from the prime eyes of the world. They can't handle the truth. Without hesitation, Maziokoro kicked the door, sending it crashing to the ground. The night had taken a terrifying turn, and Chinedu and Amaka were left standing in the middle of it, their hearts heavy with regret and fear as they faced the wrath of a father and the judgment of the village. As panic ensues, Muna materializes out of the fog, swiftly grasping Amaka's hands and hoisting her onto his back. Let's go, he urges, his voice steadying the frightened hearts around him. Chinedu, overwhelmed with gratitude, follows as they escape into the woods behind his hut. Navigating through the dense forest, they reach his home, a treehouse. Muna carefully lays Amaka on his bed and offers her a wrapper for comfort, instructing her to use the restroom when she's ready. The air is thick with unspoken tension as they exchange looks, each grappling with their own fears. Amaka steps away to gather herself, leaving Muna and Chinedu surrounded by unasked questions. Concerned for Amaka, Muna probes, what happened? Why is she bleeding? Why are the villagers after you? Chinedu avoids his gaze but is prompted by Muna's insistence. I heard the spirits, Muna interjects, an urgency in his tone. They warned me of your trouble. Now, can you share your truth? Taking a deep breath, Chinedu opens up, confessing the burden he has carried since leaving his homeland of Ndiowu. I have a past with women that nearly shattered my life, he admits, and I sought solace in this village where I believed no one knew me. I have a big manhood, and this had prevented me from being intimate with any woman. Muna, unflinching, leans closer. I've seen many things. You are not alone in your struggles. The weight of secrets begins to dissolve in the warmth of understanding. Intrigued, Chinedu asks if Muna has secrets of his own. Yes, Muna nods, and when the time is right, I will share them with you. However, the conversation shifts back to Amaka. Chinedu narrates the events that led to her injury and why the villagers came at him. Amaka re-enters, breaking the tension, and Muna smiles at her. You need a healer, Amaka. How are you? She reassures them, I'll be fine with some healing herbs. Lucky for you, Muna replies, I have just the thing. With care, he prepares a warming bowl of bushmeat pepper soup to nourish her spirit. Grateful for Muna's kindness, Chinedu expresses his heartfelt thanks. No one has ever cared for me like you. Muna chuckles. What are friends for? Days turn into nights, and within the sanctuary of the treehouse, the trio shares laughter, stories, and the bond of friendship. As Amaka begins to feel at home, she decides it's time to return to her village. "I must go home, Chinedu," she declares one morning. "My father is likely worried sick." Understanding her need for closure, Chinedu agrees. "Let me first ensure the villagers know you're safe. Then I will come for you." Muna accompanies Amaka back to the village. Back at the treehouse, Chinedu's curiosity piqued. He begins exploring Muna's artifacts. As he sifts through ancient texts and oddities, Muna watches silently, having anticipated this moment. "Sorry, Muna. I didn't realize you were here." Chinedu apologizes, caught in the web of discovery. Muna smiles. "No harm done. I meant to share my magic with you. I will show you futures unseen, technologies unimagined." One evening, while they sit atop the treehouse, gazing at the stars, the atmosphere shifts. Muna shares mystical tales of distant lands, drawing Chinedu into a world filled with wonder. Their laughter mingles with the sea breeze until Muna leans in, attempting to kiss Chinedu. Startled, Chinedu recoils, confusion washing over him. "Why would you do that?" Muna's response is calm. "Because I want to, and deep down you feel the same." Chinedu, with a mixture of intrigue and uncertainty, questions, "What do you mean? Could two men ever be together?" Muna's enigmatic smile holds secrets untold. "Yes, but there's more to me than meets the eye," he reveals, standing tall. "I'm not a typical man." As Muna stands before Chinedu, the revelation hangs in the air, a new understanding forming between them. The bonds of friendship deepen, but are they ready to navigate the complexities of identity and connection?